Call meeting order at 4:05. And the roll call is, everybody is here except for Nikki and
Sarah.
Sarah. And Sarah said she couldn't be here. Nikki, I have not heard from. And Megan is here with us as well as, is your intern?
Sydney is on, Sydney Selden.
Hello, Sydney.
Hello, everyone.
Okay, so you have the draft minutes. And they're before you. Frank had suggested that there were 2 items missing. In the minutes, one was that we had a brief discussion about the potential changing of the role of the task force going forward, and it was just a conversation about that. And the other item that we had a conversation about how to make the potentially make the task force a more diverse organization. And so you could reflect that in the minutes, that would be great.
Yeah, I just say on that second item, the discussion was about additional members on the task force with consideration of diversity.
Great.
Sure. Equity, but diversity.
No, that's right.
Because we're really. the fun-
Seconding with him.
Anybody want to second that?
What's that? Can you do the second thing with Frank's and Sarah's?
Yes.
That will not be in the minutes.
I listen.
With those amendments, I move that we accept the minutes.
Okay. All those in
Second,
favor?
I'll second that. I think we just all in favor.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Good. All right, just getting a bit organized here and it's okay. So anybody have any public comments? Well, anybody from the public who wish to comment? No, I guess we have no one
I
on.
don't think we have anybody from the public.
No one for the vote. Okay, anybody have any announcements they'd like to make? Guys, any announcements? Okay, then let's go on right on to new business. Megan, do you want to talk about where you are with the deep grants?
Still waiting at this point.
Okay,
Still no news. They told us sometime by the end of March, so
okay,
I will keep you all posted as I hear it.
okay. And then maybe an update on the Mystic EPA funded flood study.
No, yeah.
It is.
I guess it was
through
EPA.
Midway.
They
Yeah.
quoted.
Yeah, so for the sake of clarification, right, it's EPA money through National Fish and Wildlife Federation via the Long Island Sound Futures Fund, right?
That's it.
There we go.
See, the guys in Connecticut would say that's a Connecticut grant.
Yeah.
Futures.
Yeah. So
Okay.
since this group last met, we did have the second convening of the project steering committee. And so Frank is this task force's representative on that steering committee. The agenda included just sort of an overview of the project because we invited some folks from Circa to attend. Largely because they gave sort of the second agenda item was all about the research that they're doing on Mystic River modeling initiatives. So we got a really fantastic overview of what that research is all about. And we got to see a number of mapping visuals that they've created that show not only flood extent based on certain return of interval storms, but also depth grid analysis. So not just where is the water going to be, but how deep is it going to be in those locations, which is a terrific resource for us to have. Third agenda item was, we started talking about, the next public meeting, which we don't have a date for yet, but knowing that that's going to be coming up the horizon, what are some techniques that we should think about as we're trying to organize that meeting's approach? I think it was a great meeting, got a lot out of it.
One of the main items that was discussed was the initial, I'll say initial, effort by GZA and the town to walk the project area and to hit a fair number of the houses and get a sense of how many had basements and how many had utilities in the basement and that such, those things. That was very timely, given the fact that in December we had a significant flood event.
Yeah.
To go along with that. That I think was also a very significant part of the discussion.
So it was GCA and who did that canvassing?
Gee, you can tell.
GCA and me. We spent 2 days, January 4th and 5th. In the study area. We're actually likely gonna go back out in March and do a bit more. But we went door by door. Knocking, talking to people about flooding, talking about their buildings and aspects of the buildings that might make it more or less vulnerable to flood damage. So if they have basements, are the utilities in the basements? If they are they elevated? We definitely took advantage of the fact that the December 22nd into 23rd storm happened and caused a significant amount of flooding. So we specifically asked people about that. Hey, a couple weeks ago, do you have water in your property? And also asked them, a few folks had owned their properties back as far as Sandy, but those were kind of the two flood events that we mentioned.
So where is that data going to be just internal to the working group, or is that data available for?
So GZA is using it as one component of the vulnerability assessment. So they'll be doing all of the GIS analysis work, but then complementing that with essentially the ground truthing we did and the hyperlocal property by property data. What GZA is talking about and has proposed to us is that maybe they organize it into 4 or 5 building typologies. So we're talking about common trends as well as potential actions that could be done for the sake of resiliency, you know, talking about houses versus condos versus business buildings, versus, you know, but making it sort of clumping the data in a way. We certainly won't publish anything that tells you anything specific about a certain property, right? That would be.
Yeah, no, I.
Right, yeah,
I know.
yeah.
So what was the reaction of homeowners? Outside the doors?
Really positive. We didn't know how it was gonna go. I am thrilled that we sent out a letter in advance. That seems to make all the difference. So most people knew who we were when we showed up and that we were coming and they had anticipated that. Everyone that answered the door was willing to talk to us. No one said, get out of here.
Get your cue out of my door.
Get lost. Some folks spent a good 20-25 minutes with us talking all about their experience. We went inside some properties and actually looked at the infrastructure. At the very least, people are happy to answer some questions for us, allow us to walk around the outside perimeter. So yeah, the reception was as great as we could have. Great dreamed.
And how many places did you go to?
I think Sam from DVA. I almost don't want to say it because it sounds like too much. I thought he said. I will get back to you on that.
I
rather than
mean,
give you
no,
false
I mean,
information.
but
Yeah.
it was like Gravel Street, Pearl Street.
It was Gravel Street, Pearl Street, Main Street, and then south of Main Street, we went down as far as Tufts Cove. That's the southern boundary of the study area, and then worked our way back up to Fort Rachel and.
So you got a
That's a pretty good,
pretty
and you did get some businesses too, that's it.
We did, yep. Of course, not everyone was home. Especially in residential areas,
There
but
building,
yeah, so we
But
did,
you said you hit something like 60 houses.
yeah.
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 60?
60.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
That's right, I didn't, I thought you had said it on this.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot.
And we did find some people who were like those real people for the communities, like Tuck. We spent like a half an hour with Tuck talking about his building, the area, and you
He
know,
loves to talk.
yeah.
Well, not only that, but the Tuck's been there for us.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Right? I mean.
Yeah, he
they're
did it.
Previous one.
Yeah.
But they're nice one.
Well, he goes back.
Not only that, very often you drive through town, you will see Tuck standing on the corner. So he's sort of an eye and fly on the wall. And during the downtown restoration project, with the cables underground and all the rest of that stuff, he had a lot to say. It was an interesting source of information.
Mhm.
Why are they here? Well, they're redoing it. Oh, really? What's going on? I guess the way I see this thing going right now is there's a vulnerability assessment. There's a risk assessment. There's places can be vulnerable, but not at much risk. No, nothing in the basement, sort of a thing. And then there's actions.
Correct.
And it's all pretty much on track.
Did you get a sense that people have gotten gear out of their basement in terms of panels and heating systems and water? No.
Mostly if they have a basement or crawl space, the utilities are down there.
Really?
The generalization I would make was that the couple people we ran into who had claimed from Sandy elevated their utilities if they had to. Other than that,
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
So there is a message that could be shared with everybody else. Okay. But and so was it a pretty small group of people that had been impacted by Sandy or?
yeah, I mean, in terms of property owners, I think we only talked to maybe a small handful who had owned their property back then. We did run into one gentleman who's like, oh, I've only owned this house for maybe 4 years, but I know the guy who owned it before me was here during Sandy and he elevated everything because he had a claim.
Okay. Good.
Neat.
And just so, what are the, what's the consulting firm doing it for you at this point? Or what's the, what are they doing in the interim?
Yeah, they're working on all the GIS analysis for the vulnerability assessment.
And that's basically looking at these maps, is that what it is?
Yeah, I mean, it's everything, and I have the full length list of layers and data sources is in the quality assurance project plan, so I can share that with you all if you're interested. There's everything from, critical infrastructure to, basics of soils and, like everything in between.
And the town is very much involved in it, Greg Hanover.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay. So when Greg's involved and the planning's involved and who else? Just,
Yeah, so our steering committee, so we as planning have the grant, so
Right.
we're managing it, myself, John and Deb Jones. And then our steering committee also includes Greg Hanover from Parks, Greg Hanover from DPW, Mark Berry from Parks, Captain B from Emergency Management. We also have Delia Morrison from Finance. That's it. From the town.
okay, good,
So-
good.
5 departments
Yeah.
total.
Is there, you sense that's, we've got the bases covered, so to speak?
So
Okay. Good. Do you want to mention that we just had a meeting with Sir?
sure.
Go ahead.
Yeah, it's going to. So we just had a subsequent meeting at Circa this afternoon to talk a bit more about mapping and how to best relay information about flooding out to the public and the different resources available. So,
That is Municipal and Frank. Correct.
and also Noah Feldman from the town's GIS department.
And basically, I think there's, they have some. They have the fine tuned 20 inches of sea level rise on the map. And what that would mean for the 100-year flood.
10-year, well,
Well,
yeah,
10-year,
100-year too, for all, that's right.
but 10-year and 100-year flood. So would add that to the maps that we showed you last time. And I don't know what, I mean, I guess the other thing that was added was possibly the need for looking at stormwater discharge points and whether that data was easily available.
And on the mapping, two types of mapping. One was just the areas that'll be wet. You've seen it, blues and darker blues, and then the depth of water in there, because some areas will get wet and it won't really mean very much, 2 inches of water. And other areas will get wet, it'll mean a lot. So go ahead.
So this information is gonna get incorporated in Noah's town maps.
To some extent, to the extent possible.
And then we also, I'm gonna connect in GZA, because of course GZA is doing mapping for us as well. So, but UConn has been very gracious, sorry, Circa has been very gracious about sharing the research that they've done. So not just the tools and the layers that they have available online, but also the results of that Mystic River modeling research that they've been doing.
And I guess the other thing, I was surprised they had money in-house now to do this kind of assistance work with towns, and so that sounds like it's.
And so the government cut their budget.
Yeah.
Yes.
What?
Yes.
Just wait a
Well,
At the moment, he's right.
okay. Well, I tried, anyhow, so that was, I thought, very positive. Anybody have any thoughts or comments about that?
Terrific.
That's great.
I wanted to just, I was thinking about this beforehand, I didn't share this with me, but it seems to me that this all has the opportunity, once we get this all together, to go back to something Frank had brought up 2 years ago, that is putting in more tide gauge staffs so people will know which way is uphill with elevations. And then signs that would go along with this to just explain to people what it is that's likely to happen, or, and that has to be carefully thought out.
We have another education
Yeah,
heading.
and then I had talked with Frank about the notion of could we set up some automatic meaning continuous tide reading gauges in that area, which would be potentially telecommunicated to potentially the police station, who's in charge of emergency management, also maybe to the library, so that it could be on display all the time, and possibly to somewhere in downtown Mystic, so people can walk by and see, well, here's where we are at the tide right now, and it would just be a very simple but straightforward way of collecting data.
Not cheap,
Pardon?
not cheap.
Well, not so true, not quite true. Remembering that there are no millionaires today, they're all billionaires.
Right.
So, right, I mean, you've got $1 million in your
No big
house.
deal.
You know, no, I think a gauge, I know gauges, we have some gauges that are $1,000, $2,000 for a gauge. But it's getting it in, getting the telemetry set up on it, and then taking care of it.
Yeah.
So it's very doable.
No, I
And
know
under-
it's very doable. But erecting the signs, I think.
Oh, that's another story.
Extremely doable.
Sure.
And it was just the communication network is a little bit more niche.
Absolutely. There's no question that any one of these things is.
Right.
I can draw on a piece of paper for $5 in an hour of my time, $200. And it's done. Now you go from there. You gotta make the post and you gotta get the post in. So there are some dollars involved in it, but the gauge, I think, is a very interesting idea. And he also asked about a time-lapse camera.
Yeah, because
There's some of those too that are available.
I mean,
You know, your downtown cam.
there are available for all of us through Cabela's and other sportsmen. They have what they call critter cams, which if you see the raccoon walking by, well, the reason why you couldn't set something similar that up with
On Steamboat Wharf or something like
So
that.
I guess
Steamboat Wharf, exactly.
on Channel 8 News every night with the weather, you know, they show
Well,
the
they-
landing in London
Well-
and now the bridge in Mystic.
Yeah.
There already are cameras set up
Yeah,
downtown.
I think it's on the Chamber of Commerce building.
It's on a couple different buildings.
Well,
Yeah, because it always, well, it looks at it from this direction.
Yeah, it gets us some strange angles.
What's this direction? It looks like
It comes
the other
out,
direction.
no, but it comes, the camera on WTNH is from the west. It's not from the old
Right.
store.
No, it's looking back toward, the one I see looks from the Chamber of Commerce across the bridge. No,
Guess we have different ones on different TV
Well,
stations.
there's another one
Channel
that's
three.
on the corner of that,
Mine's Channel 8.
that's Maxwell's big brick, the main block building that looks
Well-
west.
Anyway,
I would like to potentially debate about how we go with this thing. I think it would be just a wonderful educational tool for Joe Q Public.
Well, a lot of people, and especially visitors, but if you don't live right on the water, and you're not really interested in swimming or clamming, you don't pay any attention to the tide coming in and going out. And so I agree, it could be just sort of an interesting thing. People would be an educational tool to
Yeah.
let people know that the tide is high at this time today and it's low at this time. And when there's aberrant stuff going on, pay more attention to it. The tide is expected to be, 3 feet above normal high tide today, or probably above.
Right.
Well,
And people that have boats or, pay attention to that, but most people don't. pay attention.
Yeah, the other thing that this goes along with the tide step. It seems to me that we potentially could put little benchmarks in the street. We'd have to pick a couple of streets. And you have what 1 foot looks like, what 2 feet looks like. And it would be something that people walking through Vista could see. As a way of, well, where are we with respect to sea level? And that might be and that's.
Scare
required-
tactic.
Pardon?
A scare tactic, I'm not sure.
Well, it's not so much a scare tactic as it is, here's what the reality is.
On the bridges, I think you go under the Mystic Bridge and the railroad bridge, there are all those things that. How you.
Like Groton,
is
yeah,
and how much room you get.
There's a bridge saying in 1938, the water was
Like here.
here, that.
So I think there's something there,
Six.
which would fit well with an educational
Yeah,
module, that's all, and I'm not sure. I'm just thinking down the line. So, and part of this would logically either be a combination of seminars at Avery Point and or lectures at the town library.
that's another subject.
But that's,
No, we say we shifted away from the tide gauges.
yeah, no, but it's all about education.
I understand. Thank you. I was interested to hear Jim say just briefly, easy to miss, at the end, when he talked about working with the towns in that grant that they had, there was an educational component. So we've been talking about an educational component that includes elections in that. So
Okay.
that's coming back up.
Great, okay, good. That'd be good.
Sorry, I didn't get that. An education thing that includes what?
Sorry. The grant that
Right,
mentioned,
has an education component.
has an educational component which includes seminars,
Seminars, right.
okay? And there was discussion, there has been discussion on that matter. Okay,
Anything
circuit.
else?
And here before, but in circuit this time.
Anything else on Mr. Flood study in Groton? Is this town staff feeling, besides you feeling comfortable with what's going on?
I think so.
Okay, no, I'm just,
I don't think that anyone has any big red flags or sources of concern, we're.
I just want, sometimes you hear grumbling and I just,
but the town council.
no, I'm trying to ask.
That didn't make the minutes.
Yeah.
That, not the minutes. Anyhow, okay, so the next item is, Megan has come up with a couple of students and from the CLEAR program from University of Connecticut. You want to explain what you have in mind and
Sure.
can introduce
Sydney,
Sydney.
Sydney?
Absolutely. So Sydney, I'll give a little overview and then I'll give you a chance to introduce yourself. I have reached out to Juliana Barrett and others at the UConn CLEAR program who manage the environmental core program. Several months ago, really, I was actually asking a question about some previous work students had done to look at opportunities for stormwater best management practices across town and so forth. And emailed back and forth a bit and happened to ask if the students ever did projects around communication. And she said, every year they have a different host of students with different interests. And so I pitched to them just a very brief idea that, as we've talked about in this group, as I talk a lot about with John and Deb and others, communication around climate is a big thing to get your arms around, right? How are you doing the outreach? How are you messaging different things? How are you getting to a variety of people as we've talked about in meetings, how much do you do social media? How much are you doing newspaper? All of the various ways that you can disseminate information. But I think with climate, you have to be very intentional. More so than maybe even some things about really thinking about your audience, thinking about your messaging. And so knowing that we are moving towards doing a climate action plan, how do we start doing some of the groundwork in terms of putting together a communication strategy? And just a couple of weeks ago, they reached back out and said, hey, we have 2 students who are interested in working with you on that. So the 2 students are Sydney and Caitlin. Caitlin isn't able to join tonight, but Sydney is.
What's Caitlin's last name?
Well, I will look that up and get that to you for a moment, or maybe Sydney can tell you in a moment. I know it's hyphenated and names are not sticking in my head these days. We've only had 1 conversation to date, so really this is like the very intro parts of it. I know that Sydney and Caitlin are working on putting together essentially their scope of work for what they're going to be doing over the semester. And on one of the first days in March, they're actually going to be coming down to Groton, and I'm going to give them a tour of town to help them understand more the ins and outs of the town itself. So very much in beginning stages, but I cannot put into words how impressed I was meeting Sydney and Caitlin for the first time. Not only do they have experience in the subject matter, having taken a course on climate communications or conservation communications, they both are so ambitious. They have a ton under their belt already. Caitlin actually had served on her own town's conservation commission, so has really great insights. So I'm very excited about the opportunity to get to work with them more. And with that, Sydney, do you want to take just a quick moment to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Hello, everybody. My name is Sydney, and I can start by answering that first question. Caitlin's last name is Dawson Lawley. So a little bit more about myself. I am a sophomore here at UConn. I'm majoring in environmental science, and I'm actually dual majoring in an individualized major, which we just came up with the name, which is culturally relevant, community-based sustainability communications. So I work at the Natural Resource Conservation Academy at UConn, and in that job, I serve as a difference maker mentor for high school students in Bridgeport. So they are conducting community action projects. I have 4 students conducting a variety of projects, but we're very big on approaching community work from a working with instead of working for kind of perspective. I took a course called Leadership in Community-Based Conservation, where that was the entire focus, was how do we work with instead of for communities? How do we understand the different cultural, social differences and navigate that and produce positive change? So yeah, and I'm also an intern at the Office of Sustainability. So I heard you guys mentioning Avery Point a little bit. And as Megan said, we're still in the beginning planning stages of our climate action plan, but working with Avery Point and engaging youth as much as possible is definitely a priority.
Sydney,
If she got back from the microphone.
Sydney, you need to move back to the microphone because we're having a really hard time hearing you
No, understanding you.
and understanding you, okay?
Hear you.
Sorry, Cindy, the issue we're having on our side is that we normally have a speaker system. The speaker system wasn't available today, and so we're relying on the speaker and the monitor, and I am struggling to figure out how to adjust the volume on it because it's not usually what we have to do. So actually, hold tight for 1 second.
So sorry about that. Is this better?
No, yeah, it's not you at all.
Bottom right with the. That box.
Adjust volume. Here we go. There we go. Change device volume. See all of these that.
Yeah, that was great. It's down there, yeah.
That's how I started the day.
Yeah. That volumes. I tend to do too much of this because,
Move back a little bit, that'll probably.
yeah, sorry, Sydney, to ask you to fix our problem. If you could just, move back from your
It's just
microphone.
it's coming through a little loud, that's hard to get the detail.
And talk slowly, please.
Absolutely. Is this better?
Yes.
Yes.
Perfect. I can start from the beginning, if that's okay.
Sure.
Perfect.
Would you
So-
like in the beginning, or is there a point? at
Yeah,
which-
it would help. I mean, Frank, I just missed most of that, so.
The fidelity is lousy. It's not just the loud.
Yeah, the audio is lacking, for which we apologize. Sydney, if you would be so kind as to, yes, start from the beginning, that would be great.
Not a problem at all. So my name is Sydney. I will be working with Caitlin, whose last name is Dawson Lawley. And we're both students at UConn. We'll be working with Megan to develop a climate action plan. A little bit about what I'm doing at UConn. I'm a sophomore. I'm dual majoring in environmental science and an individualized major called culturally relevant, community-based sustainability communications. So what that major would entail is work like this, working with instead of for communities to develop positive change, especially from the sustainability front and how interdisciplinary that is. So working with communities, understanding the different social, cultural, political aspects of it. And yeah, I'm also an intern at the Office of Sustainability. So I heard you guys mention Avery Point a bit, and in our kind of beginning talks about the climate action plan, focusing on youth for sure, and developing a connection with Avery Point on our end, just to see what they're already doing, trying to maximize the opportunities that you guys already provide. And I'm really excited to learn more about Groton and hopefully meet all of you guys in person and learn more about each of you.
That's great. Thank you,
Good.
Sydney.
Thank you.
What did you say your major was?
Yeah, I'm majoring in environmental science, and I'm dual majoring also in culturally relevant, community-based sustainability communications.
Uh-huh.
Very long name.
What do you use for social media?
For me personally or for my jobs?
Well, I mean, are you Facebook?
I do use Facebook, yes.
Oh, that's Snapchat.
Not Snapchat. Definitely not as active on Facebook as I am on Instagram, but I can confirm I have an account.
It's interesting. I've been quizzing the kids and grandkids on that and get quite a variety of answers. Hardly any on Facebook.
Yeah. I'm probably the last generation. I was born in 2003, so I'm probably the last generation who uses Facebook. So
And now I have an assignment for you, Sydney. You ready? You got a piece of paper?
absolutely, I do.
His name is George Marshall. You
Got it.
understand? George Marshall.
Mhm.
And he wrote a book that I'm going to be quizzing you on when I see you. I'm a professor at the University of Connecticut.
Oh, I'm excited. Okay.
So I'm going to be quizzing you on this, okay? George Marshall's book. It runs something like, don't even think about it.
Don't even talk.
Don't even talk about it. Why the human brain is wired to deny climate change.
Ooh, I'm excited. Very excited for that quiz.
Okay? I think it's really an essential read for those. Now, mind you, I'm an oceanographer, so I don't really know what I'm talking about, but that doesn't stop me talking, you know that. But it seems to me in my read of it, it's an essential bit of information for somebody that's dealing with communications on this subject.
For Yale work.
Yeah,
There's a whole generation that needs to be reached.
right. And then, of course, there is the matter of how, speaking of generations, the generations communicate, and that's really an issue that's affecting all of us.
Mhm.
And hopefully they can provide some insights into that.
So, Megan,
Thank you.
is it possible that when you have Sydney and Caitlin down, we could do that on a date when we're gonna be meeting, so we could actually meet them in person?
We,
Is that
so
possible?
possibly Sydney and Caitlin, between their course schedules, they're up at the Stores campus.
Yes. Oh.
It has been, they got packed agendas. So we had ended up on, I believe it's Friday, March 3rd. Starting in the morning, probably about 8:30 for them to come and do a tour. So certainly if folks were available and wanted to come meet with them first, we could arrange for that.
Yeah, I
We
think.
don't have to have a formal meeting.
Yeah, so, you know, that might be a really good thing, just, given that I had a hard time understanding what was being said.
Yeah, since they'll be both here in person.
Okay, that'd be great.
Okay.
Okay. Well, welcome to the troubled world of climate change.
Thank you. Excited to be a part of it.
Thank you so much, Sydney.
We look forward to meeting you, Sydney.
Thank you, Sydney.
And thank you, Megan, for tracking this one down, and
Mhm.
sounds like it's gonna be good.
Yeah.
Any other? There'll be a semester, which will end in June.
Yeah, I don't, when they get me the scope of work, we'll have a little bit more, I think,
Okay,
of a timeline discussion, but
okay,
yeah, semester, I mean, I think the college semester, frankly, November, then do that only goes till May.
Yes,
I'm assuming their work will finish up.
you pay more, you go less.
Yeah, it's right, yeah.
okay, other comments about that? Okay, I had, the next item is, health of Groton, and I put it down there, and you all are wondering, what the hell is Steve thinking about? Well, I heard a, presentation given, about the, St. Lawrence River. And, they include climate change and all kinds of changes that are taking place in the system. And they sort of, this group is doing, sort of boiled it down to having a presentation around what they call the health of the St. Lawrence River. And it seemed to me that that kind of an approach would be a useful approach for us to think about, or a report from us at some point, which is the health of Groton in changing in the time of changing climate. Might be a really nice way of sort of putting this all together, so it's a story which has a lot of graphics and not so much writing, which basically lays out, here's where we are in our community.
So do you need water, land,
Yep.
air, all?
Yep, all of the resources that we're talking about that are in Groton. So I just wanted to share that idea with you.
Can we get an example of that?
I haven't got it, but I'll have to do that.
Mhm.
I heard this is a presentation, and it struck a note with me as being something that actually might be really, really helpful in terms of particularly educating the public.
Think of the ecosystem.
I mean, you could,
Lots of, we can learn from everybody, we can all learn from each other.
so that's all I had. Now, any other comments about that?
No, it sounds great.
Is that something that would fit with your idea of the climate action plan?
I think I could see the example first.
Okay, okay,
Yeah,
well, I'll
that'd be
bring it.
Okay.
Bring it. I didn't have a chance to get it. Okay, is there any other news that people want to bring up that's what would be sort of new stuff? Okay, I have something, you all think about it. This fits with, what we're doing. New York Times had, Sunday section, news and review the week, and there's a whole 2-page about the American dream being washed away. It's all about flooding, and it is basically a part of the book. But my point of showing this to you is that this is really going mainstream. And it's happening, and people like this couple they described in here have been not only suffering the event, but so the 5 years that have followed it. And I just thought, boy, here we are. Anybody who wants to deny this is, when you look at this kind of information, it's pretty powerful. Now, we're not Houston, for sure,
Or California.
or
California.
or California, but
Oregon and California.
we are on the coast of east coast of the United States. So I think that's something that we ought to look at. The other thing is that bring to your attention. There is, you're all getting this update, monthly update from Circa about their programs.
What's that? Nothing.
The circuit newsletter.
Oh, certain stuff.
Yeah, okay, that's one. Two is that there is now a new publication out from the Department of Energy Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy. And this is something that you all probably ought to, and I'll happy to send you a link.
Send the link, please.
It has a bunch of just common sense stuff. It also has a bunch of webinars and so forth.
One of the interesting things about the new legislation federally is that they figured out a way, IRS has not yet figured it out, but to make not-for-profits eligible for all those tax credits, which obviously has been a huge hurdle because you always had to have somebody that had a tax liability. And I guess the IRS is working on what the guidelines and how that's actually going to operate, but I guess it's going to come back and sort of a grant form to help fund it in the way of a tax credit, but I don't understand how they're going to pull it off, but it will change the picture of energy efficiency investments dramatically, and solar and, heat pumps and everything.
Right.
Okay. Well, any of those have any other comments like this?
It's a nice segue from that. So the Energy Efficiency Conservation Block Grant, which is the funding that you all used a while back to do the energy action plan for the town, as well as the lighting upgrade in the library. That program got a huge influx of cash through the Infrastructure Investment Jobs Act. Never keep track
I think
of that without it, right? It is the IFA. So what they've done is they're actually rolling out a massive amount of formula funding to local governments. So I attended a webinar last week, 2 weeks ago on that. They are still building the plane as they fly it kind of thing. But the town of Groton's formula funding is over $76,000.
Saw something in the paper on it.
Yeah, 76,400. Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, you could just send it to all of us.
Sure.
I don't recall seeing that.
There was a little piece with this.
I didn't actually see it in the newspaper. This was something that actually,
You got it online.
sort of. Because I am on some of their newsletters. It was actually a very good time when someone with Public Works asked me about funding for infrastructure projects, and I went back to that website. And sure enough, they're like, oh, we have a brand new program we're rolling out. Check that. So it was very good timing.
Right.
So that's something that I've started, internal discussions about the funds and the process of getting the funds.
As that sort of develops, could you keep us posted, because I still have a bug up my behind on this stuff, like, we gotta get solar panels on all public buildings. And if we don't do it now, when are we gonna do it? And it's expensive, but
You have the money,
if you have the money, we really ought to do it.
not that money.
Yeah.
I mean, it saves us a huge amount of money. I mean, the example in the like fire district, they did that when we had this opportunity. Their basically bills have been next to zero. And so it's an economic savings, never mind the benefits to climate change.
Mhm.
And you all may have some other, I know Jesse has been wrestling with this stuff.
It's really interesting, I guess, parenthetical, 10-second lab. I'm sitting here thinking about that flooding. And what the first thing that came across to me was Edison May. If I'm honest about it, oh yeah, they had floods. And I think about the tragedy and the earthquakes in Turkey, Syria, and you look at how those buildings came down, and they were nickel dime against the earthquake-proof building on a fault. Granted, it hasn't been active for quite a while, but they are sitting on a major fault, and that whole part of the world is major sensitivity to earthquake. The largest that was ever recorded, I think, was in Turkey, not many years ago. 10 point something or other on Richter. Why don't think it back to me and my reaction to the floods and maybe fires out west and all the rest of it is how do you make people act with this tendency, this human tendency? Maybe it goes back to our friend Marshall.
Yeah.
This sort of game. And that's what we're dealing with. That we're sitting here planning for the 100-year storm. Nobody gives a damn about the 100-year storm until it comes. Kind of a thing. I may not be alive or whatever the answer is, but it really was sort of striking when you look at these situations we have today about the need for clear and present danger, which if we don't have, we don't get action politically and community wise. Because your buddies down at the bar. Say, oh yeah, okay, let's go. I'm gonna go fishing tomorrow and worry more about the outboard motor or what. So it's sort of interesting. It's really a bit of a mountain to climb. And I think it's something that we recognized early in the game. We, the task force, recognized early in the game and continue to be sensitive to it and struggle a little bit with it. Have a Dixieland band going along with the seminars or something, you gotta draw them in. I don't know. It's just, as I said, battle. Right.
Well, I think we've actually made good progress. If it's possible to make progress, we've made as much as anybody else.
Yeah.
We've got a policy in place. We've got Megan on board.
Yep.
We've got now grants coming in. And yeah, we haven't made it all work.
This was in the context of the education of the community. I'm looking at it.
Well, people are slow to change. I mean, even people that know better still leave their cars running and still
Right.
use plastic bags and, so, there's. It's just,
Yeah.
it takes a while and it's more than just education to change people's habits.
Yeah, and the more of it, some of it is economics. I can't afford another car at $60,000 or whatever it is today.
And I think, Marshall has it,
Yeah.
and whether it's gun violence, whether it's this,
Yeah.
whether, we live in the present, what is in front of us.
It's
Right.
human nature, it's all interrelated. Yep. And I think, we're doing our little part and thank God we have Megan and now Sydney and Caitlin, and I think, that's what's happened, that's the way you make it happen. And there are a lot of students and a whole new generation that's getting involved and is making it happen, so we just have to keep communicating.
That's the benefit of it. This thing cuts both ways.
Yeah.
What we get from them and what we give to them.
Absolutely, I think that's the whole idea.
Such an exposure to it, to the realities of it.
Yeah,
Like we've had nothing the last 2 days. We, the university professor, nothing but communications regarding budget. From the students, and the Senate made a resolution to allow the students to go and pick it in or demonstrate in Hartford. That gets their attention bucks. And so it's interesting. Actions. We keep talking about how you come to action. It's not a straight line.
Okay, well, I think this fits into if those funds are available and we can help with that, we'd like to. That's really important.
Okay.
Along those lines, I had, and this goes back to our earlier mission of looking at the various stovepipes. I had a conversation with the Navy public affairs guy, and he said, I'd be delighted to either come give you a presentation.
Was this
Or-
Bob Ross? Was it Bob Ross or
No,
something?
no, this is the guy at the base, Stephen Sadowski, and I can't
Okay,
tell
that's
you how
fine.
to pronounce, I've got the name at home.
It's all right.
Do they have an environmental officer that can come along with it?
Yes,
do.
they do, in fact. Anyhow, so he said, well, we could give you a dog and pony show up there if it were like 6 people. And so if this gang wants to go there, see what they're doing, and they're actually doing a whole lot. That would be one possibility. The other possibility would to have them come down here and talk to us. I had been there once, and it was 10 years ago, and it was impressive back then. And now a lot of the stuff that they were talking about is up and running. For example, the solar panels and the
Fuel cell. and
the
they
fuel
have
cells are up
done
and
a
running.
huge amount of there.
Pardon?
I would strongly recommend going there. There is so much that.
Well,
they
so
can
I will,
With Groton Utilities, yeah, I feel interesting.
so I will happily set that up and maybe I'll talk with you about it. But we all look together and
That's a group we haven't met with.
I met with them way back and was impressed with them. And then the problem is that it changes with whoever the boss is. And you might want to think whether we want to take John Bird. I mean, John Bird knows the CEO, or whether you want to take John Reiner, but my sense is. Pardon?
Or both.
Or both. Well, we gotta be careful about the numbers, that's all, but I think we can do that. Because, and part of it is, I think we'll find their way out ahead of us. And it is worth having the senior leadership understand that. And that it may open up some possibilities just by.
Total off the subject sort of, but it's environmental. As opposed to the times, but basically, I think the world is giving up on saving the sturgeon. And when they were doing all of this stuff at the base, when I worked on, when I was still at deep, they had to change their whole construction of the new docks for the submarines because they discovered sturgeon in the Thames River. And I would love to know what they're doing now, but they're, I mean, it would really be fascinating. Totally different subject matter, but
I mean, if you have specific questions, we certainly can set that up.
I think you want to set a number of dates. And pay for options.
Well, yeah,
Because you
I mean,
know,
the problem is that,
Pick today, have to be 13 things on that day.
no, I know, but I'll try to do it around our meeting, our normal meeting time. But if we have to change it, we will. I mean, still have to go through the,
no, I think
Sure, this was-
when it works for them.
just wait, wait till someone tries to get into the base. Because they want to hear what's going on, and that's, it'll be a different story. It's not all matter. Okay, that's what I see. Okay, so, anything on the climate action plan?
We skipped extreme heat study.
What about the heat study?
Oh, I'm sorry,
We know what's going on.
heat study, right? And
So the applications period for the fellows closes tomorrow. By the 15th, I believe, I'll have a list of the top rated fellows to take a look at, and we have interviews set up in the upcoming weeks.
oh, terrific. Okay, so that's moving along nicely. Good. B.
And then B, no update, that's really the same as the
Okay.
deep grant proposal of.
Jesse, do you want to speak a little bit about what's happening in Hartford?
What happened to the climate action?
Oh, she's,
That you said B, and I said no update.
no update.
Thank you.
Okay, sorry.
It's early to say what's happening.
Okay,
Things are all over the place, and energy is a huge issue because people just last week got their first new electric bill. And for most people that came close to doubling. So there's everything from abolishing or taking the regulatory authority out of the out of deep. I think most unfortunately our local representative was part of this, to having the legislature have to approve rates, etc., which is just idiotic. So it's just.
And won't happen.
No, it won't, but
Yeah.
it's, our senator is doing all sorts of crazy things too, but it's so early. The committee, actually yesterday was the meeting, so things are starting to gel as to what specific committees are actually really considering.
But is it clear why the rates went up?
Oh, yes, because of natural gas prices.
It was simply natural gas prices. And they went to public utilities presumably and got permission to raise the
Yeah,
rate.
because the utilities just pass through whatever the cost of power is. The distribution rates did not go up.
So those stay the same.
Right,
It's that
right.
Yeah.
winter time and rain. and Constraints pipeline. So that means that everything from Hydro Quebec, et cetera, is back on the drawing table, which it had been really taken off the table. Because that involves somehow getting the power from St. James Bay down to, well, really the center in Massachusetts for distribution. There is one line that comes down through western Vermont, because Vermont has been using Hydro Quebec forever.
Right.
But it's just, it's a mess right now, and nobody really has a handle on how to change it, because you can't build infrastructure overnight, and from a climate perspective, there's been a great deal of opposition to building infrastructure, because it's there forever and will have to get paid for forever. It's kind of like the stranded costs of millstone and that kind of thing.
But maybe there's a good to it. It's sort of like raising the price of gasoline. Everybody starts looking at the cars and wondering about it.
Unfortunately, it also makes things like heat pumps less economic right now, because they run on electricity, and right now electricity is 24 cents a kilowatt hour. That gets expensive. If you don't
That's
have-
getting competitive with offshore wind.
Yeah, no, it is. I mean, it's
And
an
that's-
offshore wind is subsidized. There are $2,000 rebates for heat pumps, but you can
Right.
use that up in the season. So it's a huge challenge right now.
And of
But
course, added to it is our challenge, which is the panels on the roof.
Right.
Which really, yeah,
And
it's,
I will tell you that in January, I mean, my system usually, January was a really dark month.
yes, it was.
218 kilowatt hours instead of about 6 or 7.
Yeah,
But on the other hand, that's costs that didn't get to Eversource to cover the cost of the increase in LNG. And so
That's more complicated.
I know, that's this whole picture, but I would hope that it would encourage more work on the infrastructure, which is definitely needed all around. But it won't.
Do we really want a new LNG terminal or new pipelines? I mean, I think the Hydro Quebec thing. I mean, that was the Northern Pass route that I'm not to get into all of this, but it came down through the White Mountains, right through Franconia Notch.
Yes, it does.
So it's not simple.
I thought maybe you were gonna tell us about the intermodal bill put in by Ms.
But
Summers.
this summer wasn't that cute.
But you know what, where the intermodal proposal is the old Dow site.
Oh, yeah.
That's.
oh yeah, we saw different, did you?
Well, no, listen,
Well, reread the paper today, read Dave Collins.
no, he's talking about her.
Talking about-
He's talking about, Seaport Marine.
Yes, right.
Heather Summers put in a bill that, for all the looks of it,
It's-
benefits the development of an intermodal facility on the Mystic River
At Seaport Marine.
at Seaport.
That's
Marine.
submarine.
That's what we're talking about.
I'm
That's what
not
we're
talking
talking
about that. I'm talking about the Dow Chemical site on the Thames River,
Oh,
which is being developed by Cashman for intermodal transport, and that's where the dredge materials business came in to begin with, and a few other things. That's a real intermodal facility. You got rail there, you got things coming off the river, you're pretty close to 95. But think of the scale of that, money, 70 to 100 acres of site
Mhm.
against 7 acres or whatever it is down.
Farm real estate downtown,
Say what a kind of a bonds.
not close to me.
She's a.
okay, so, any further in this? Okay, then, next thing is I want, D is the changing role of, the task force, which we discussed last time a bit. And Megan kindly sent around to us, sort of a summary of what some of the things we said. And I think, that was actually quite useful, because I went back and looked at that against what our current charter is. It looks like we fit within majority of that with very little tweaking. I think that was very useful. Thank you for doing that. And I went on to thinking about that. I think I am thinking that maybe we don't need to change much. And maybe we change the name and we square up and actually call it resiliency, sustainability, and climate change, so that it's clear that we're talking about everything. The other thing is that there might well be a provision in there that says that we will engage in various matters that come before the town that impact, well, that'll impact climate change. And I'm thinking the example was that last year we waded in and provided a letter to the town council saying the data center as it was proposed was
I was just thinking that's.
not a smart thing to do from a climate point of view. So I think maybe an explicit statement about that we would do that from time to time. And then I think
So is our role then maybe transitioning to more, because we talked about that at length last time, not a task force has a beginning and an end. Do we become a commission? Do
well,
we
it become
become
maybe an advisory
an
committee.
advisory commission?
Yeah,
something like
something
that?
like that, but I have to do some more research to make sure that whatever we do
An
is
advisory
consistent.
board.
Yeah, it could be an advisory board, an advisory commission, I'm not sure. I need to go to small research.
Mostly, I think we want to be useful to
And then-
Megan, not in the way.
But I think your point was we have opportunity to really help you and
I think there is collective wisdom and great connections and, you know, it's sort of the intergenerational thing, but also all of us have lived around here a long time. We know a lot of people and, you know, they're not so much pulling strings, but just making connections. And I think that's where we can have a.
we've already demonstrated that, I think. Yeah, well, that's good. I mean, the Mystic River study is a good example of that, you know, we all know a lot of people over there across the border there. And here we're doing a study, just our side, and how do you, and I mean, there's the whole history there, of course. I think it's a lot of good. And that was actually the third point, is that be explicit about that. Part of our turf is to talk to other jurisdictions. I think that would be clear. Someone says, why are you doing it? Well,
Well,
because
so we're dealing with regional issues.
exactly. I mean, the air floats
national
over.
issues, World issues, yes.
Yeah, air floats over all the
Yes.
towns, as does the water and so forth.
So I'm not sure out of what you just said, that there is something.
No, there's nothing
that's
other than to say
connected,
that-
right. Okay,
I don't
Something
think,
for the discussion.
nothing, I'm just,
saying that's something we need to.
I think it's something we need to focus on.
Fine.
I was just,
Because I wasn't coming up.
you guys have any thoughts?
Sounds good.
Okay, Frank's getting hungry.
One,
no,
one quick thought, that one,
go ahead.
now a member of the group. that I'm interjecting. I think, Jesse, something you said at the very end of our discussion has resonated with me, and the suggestion or the idea you raised was, right, like the town council in 2019 signed the resolution. They're going to include climate change considerations in everything that they do. And I have heard from this group, there's some frustrations about how that has or has not happened. So maybe something to think about is why that is the case, right? Is there more training, more conversation, different approaches we can use to really help instill climate change in town operations? I'm not saying just for the town council, but, you know, throughout governance, it's hard. If you tell people they have to think about climate change for budget considerations, you know, you're gonna, some people like get it, and some people who are like,
I know.
right, so like, I just started thinking a bit about this group potentially helping with some of that, of the, now that we've committed to, we're doing it, how are we doing it?
Right.
I think ideally, and this would involve quite a bit of commitment from the task force and stuff, but every one of the town departments develops a strategic plan, correct? Would be being a part of that discussion on some level. So have you considered, you know, I mean, it's not to change their strategic plan, but it's to say, as you are sort of developing that, what are the climate implications of that? And I think ideally that is really what incorporating it in all of town decisions and planning means.
Well, I think we're gonna have an opportunity coming up pretty quick here. And that's the, when they have to do a revision to the plan of conservation and development. The OCD is gonna be that really ought to be all over climate change and resiliency and sustainability.
I guess I'm thinking more of the day-to-day.
Well, no, I,
The police are supposed to be abiding by this resolution. And so the day comes when they are buying cars. But to what extent do they or can they consider electric cars or hybrids or more sensitive to whatever? And we went right down the list. You said earlier about the solar panels. So we're talking to this, I guess, the school board most probably is under that, but engineering is also under that. You know, Rick Norris, your alter ego. So that's what I mean about the day-to-day. The conservation plans and the longer-term plans, that's an important place to put an oar in. But I think we're also talking about that would mean getting at the strategy for this year against the budget for this year. We've heard of school buses. So that's coming in our lifetime, please God. I think maybe 10 years, kind of a thing you hope to see them, but there were statements like, we don't own the buses. When we talked to them about school buses. I said, well, that's silly. Of course you own the buses. You have $1 million plus a year contract. Last time I looked, even though I'm a trillionaire, $1 million can carry a lot of stroke in terms of what the bus company may or may not be supplying you with next year, sort of thing. We don't expect to do it tomorrow afternoon, but at least to have it be part of the discussion. Serious part.
I have to, and I think maybe you probably do the same thing. We have to think about how it is to do that. Is there a process that goes back to what you asked?
Right.
How do we do it? When do we do it?
Right. How best to
When
do
we first started this, we met with as many departments as we could. That was 3 years ago.
Yeah.
It's time to just go through.
Well, then we might do it again, yeah, because we are.
They all seem to be pretty sympathetic. I mean, the Public Works, for example, he was leaving before Greg took over, and boy, he did a data dump.
It certainly could be worth meeting with Groton Utilities again.
Oh, yeah,
Or Eversource, I mean, any one of them.
yeah. So I think that's important, yeah.
How best to do that.
Okay, I just will quickly update you on the feasibility study. I think I told you last time we had meetings in December. Haven't heard a word, and yesterday I got a note saying that they expect to have the preliminary draft out in 4 weeks.
4 weeks.
4 weeks, and so I'll keep you posted as what happens with that. They're gonna have a technical meeting, which I'm involved
That's
with.
better than 4 months.
Better than 4 months, that's right. DOT seems to be having all kinds of problems with staff. I mean, they've got 4,000 people and they're trying to hire another 660. And so that just tells you,
Because a lot of retirements.
well,
That's-
yeah, so, I mean, it tells you that sort of.
They wanted it.
Retirement benefits in it. That's.
I wanted it to happen.
So, that's all there is to say that, other than, I've been reaching out to the various CEOs of the towns, had a meeting with, both the Bureau of Burden, Warden and, select man from Stonington,
She's a woman, right?
select man, don't say woman, that's not good.
What?
You mean Danielle?
Danielle, I mean
She
Danielle.
wants to be selectman,
Yes,
Oh, really?
yeah,
yes,
oh, yeah,
Yes, Ben.
and
Select person?
no?
no,
Selectman.
You met with them.
met with him anyhow, and I also met with,
That's a pronoun.
But that's what you use.
I got it.
I met with the town manager and his staff in Norwich. And I've met recently with the town manager and his staff in Westerly. And I think Westerly has finally decided that there's something in it for them, and they're now going to pursue this with their state, and we'll see what happens. And so I will be aiding and abetting.
How can they lose? Have run over there?
Huh?
Why wouldn't Wesley be right in with the gang?
They are, but the problem is it stops at Westerly, and they want to take us all the way up to Wickford Junction, and that's not my turf.
We would like to go there.
But I like to go there, so anyhow, that's, I just want to tell you that's what's going on.
Good.
Frank, Groton Long Point.
Well, I can tell you, as I read the newspaper article the other day saying that the Groton Long Point Bridge project, we're gonna save it down now because it was passed to the Department of Transportation, state of Connecticut, 173 million or whatever the number was, 73 million. I was a bit perplexed because the article indicated that everything was in initial stages. The Groton Long Point Bridge project has been the subject of engineering studies paid for by the town. Public review and a task force working with the town, Greg Hanno and his gang, for, I'll say, on the order of 3 years. And there have been hydraulic studies done, there have been engineering studies done for what to do in the abutments and the size of the opening and all the rest of the stuff, and the elevation from our standpoint, the elevation of the roadway, and what it means to adjoining properties in terms of slopes down from the roadway to the adjoining properties. And the addition of sidewalks beyond the bridge to the southeast there towards Groton Long Point. And that last subject seems to be a bit of a sticky wicket. Because Groton Long Point claims they own the bridge, own the roadway in that area. In addition to anything to do with what's along the roadway. So they've been objecting to the sidewalk. And that, I think, has led the town into some legal schmiegel back and forth, which I thought was the major impediment to proceeding beyond where we were, because we looked to be, there were drawings, we had drawings of the bridge, and they selected optimum drawings. This group selected what they thought would be the optimum drawing for the bridge. When along comes this article saying, or implying that you're near ground zero. I spoke with Greg after the steering committee meeting the other day, and he said, no, this is well beyond ground zero. DOT is taking over the administrative effort on the project. And some number of engineering aspects as well, because they're responsible for it, their bridge, basically. But that they have all of the engineering stuff and the rest of it, and they're in agreement with most of it. And I suspect there'll still be this issue on the sidewalk. So if you happen to get down there, the next time I ride my bike around the corner, I'm going to make a point of hitting the pedestrians on the road that are in abundance on that road. Because I submit that the majority of those pedestrians are from Groton Long Point or Mumford.
I disagree. I think people come from all over the place to walk here. That's why the parking lot is always full then at Esquire Point. And people come from Mystic, Groton, London. It's a very like River Road and Mystic is a popular.
If you come around that corner on a bike,
There are always
you
people.
know to be careful. Because the pedestrians.
To an article, the article in the Times this morning about storing carbon in sidewalks, so we now have a carbon sink by building the sidewalks there.
In any event, what I understand from Greg is that the schedule as indicated in the paper is worst case. It might even be sooner than what's in the paper.
Yeah, Groton Long Point is sort of a sticky or interesting case study as a, whatever it is, a borough or, you know, with its separate police and
Fire
things, fire district.
fire-
And it has, you know, the roads are town roads, which is why people are allowed to walk on those roads. They're not allowed to walk or ride their bikes in Mumford Cove because that's private. But all the land on either side of the road is Groton, Long Point and all that. So I'm doing some work with them right now in the vernal pool and all those wetlands, and they actually have to do stuff, but you know, that's a very interesting area which offers a lot for them in terms of resilience and sustainability down the road. But they're doing things that in any other town in Connecticut would be highly illegal in terms of some of the dumping and storage. I mean, they're infringing on tidal wetlands,
Yeah.
and they maintain that they don't have to answer to other kinds of, you know, it doesn't matter, that they can do whatever they want in the wetlands. I don't think so. I think those are
So I'm
taken
sure
by
that's right.
state, and some of it is federal, and so that's how we've sort of gotten involved with all this thing, and hopefully it will be to the will help protect those the areas that are part of their conservation.
I also have tried to see to it that it's, that Mumford Cove gets equal time.
Mhm.
This bridge is as much a Mumford Cove bridge as the Groton Long Point Bridge, for the simple fact that one of the primary reasons for that bridge is emergency access to those two pieces of property. And when the flood comes, Groton Long Point ain't gonna be the issue, that's underwater. But Mumford Cove, for the most part, will not be.
Right.
So,
And those are the tracks on the highway bridge. It is interesting. Do you know all these places?
I've
I'll
been
take
to
you
Groton
to
Long
it.
Point. I've not been to Number Cove yet.
I live there. Well, we'll meet in.
That's right.
We'll do it.
Jill, that's the right.
Take me
So Pete's jurisdiction overrides any other jurisdiction.
Exactly.
States.
What does?
That's
Pete's
DEP.
jurisdiction over wetlands.
over wetlands.
Oh,
And
yeah.
then-
Oh, yeah.
And for them to just say, oh, no, we can, you know, because they've been doing illegal things. And since I moved there, I started noticing, I think, what are you guys doing? You're discharging the fire hydrant, the treated water into a vernal pool.
Oh my God.
And that's, that was the fire.
Any event,
That was just one thing.
Okay,
we hope, and this, the funny thing on that one was, is on the bridge thing, was this. I'm down there one day and I run into a DOT bridge inspector. And we get to chatting about the bridge, we both inspected and the rest of it. And he is thoroughly frustrated with the fact that the bridge hasn't been rebuilt. That if I come down here and inspect this one more time, the chair it out myself, you know. So get the job done.
They've
boy,
been doing
let's
a lot
go.
of survey work for the last 3 or 4 months on the bridge that goes across Amtrak on Groton Long Point Road. And you've maybe seen it there. Presumably they're planning to do something on that section of the road. I mean, they've had
215?
215, the Groton Long Point Road section 215. They've had crews of surveyors for months.
yeah, I
So
noticed
you
that.
had a time
likewise.
frame for when, I mean, sort of said the paper was wrong, so.
No, the paper is wrong in implying that everything is at initial stages. It's well beyond the initial stage. Right? But the paper schedule, I've forgotten, but it was something like 26 or 27, 24, 25, it's 3 or 4 years from now.
And it's the-
But I'd say that that was the worst case. It's the worst case. I don't remember the date. It's not next year.
Okay, anything else? One other thing that I have to bring up, I got a text this morning. From, I wasn't sure who it was, but I realized it was John Bird. He said, can you come give the town council a briefing next week? And I wrote back and said, not ready. But they clearly want to have a briefing, so we're gonna have to do that pretty soon.
A briefing on.
On resiliency, and I'll have to work for you, Megan, on that, because I think that'll have to be a joint effort.
So that's
It was,
sometime in March.
I think sometime in March.
What do they meet every other week?
Huh?
Do they meet every Tuesday, every other week?
They meet every other week,
On Tuesday night?
yeah,
Right?
there's a cow meeting and then followed by a regular meeting. And we have to go to the cow meeting.
You met with them as a group.
It's
I
how.
mean, to me, that's critical for them to get to know me.
Yeah, right.
I know, but I wanna go. To that group with Megan saying I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 grants. Because I don't wanna hear again. Anything about. Well, we're spending all this money.
I think
That's-
everything Megan said speaks for itself, even where we are right now at this moment. Yeah, certainly we could let it get further along, but honestly, I.
No,
think that-
we're at a point where I think we've got enough stuff to
Yeah.
make this make good sense.
Yeah.
And there's no reason, maybe, let me leave it like that. But I think we've got,
Absolutely.
That's where you have history and wisdom about the town council. It's,
well, I don't have any
It's such an
special,
unusual thing.
I spent enough time watching what they're
oh
doing
my God, it's,
to not be,
the data center is just one,
pardon?
the data center is just one example.
It's one example of a lot of.
Now, we didn't include that in the minutes of the last meeting, but that, I think, was beaten on a little bit at the last. The need to meet with the town council and the best way to do that. Part of it was the introduction of it,
Yes.
but part of it was just this whole schema of resilience and
Well,
sustainability.
it's so easy for them to undo, for them to undo, and it's constantly the wall that everybody runs into. So including them, communicating with them, bringing them into this to the extent that that is possible, practical.
And recognizing that them are new
Yes,
from when we got in the game.
Every
and
2
they may-
years.
They're likely to be new again if we wait long enough.
it is really.
You know. I have one question. In going through my notes, I saw something about a hazard mitigation plan for the town of Groton.
Yeah.
That was about to be finished in the notes. But was it ever finished? Do we have a?
We
Have
had one. We had one when we first met.
Yes, we
I think
met.
It was revised.
Yes,
I think it has to be updated.
The existing plan, I believe, is from 2017.
could be.
Right, so it's the COG that does the plan for the region, and then each town has its own annex. So we worked with the COG over this fall because they are in the process of updating it. And so we reviewed, they create a list of actions for each town. And so we went through a process where we reviewed what they were recommending for Groton and gave feedback. And they are, I think a few weeks ago, they were having like the internal powers be at the COG reviewing the draft. So it's coming.
So we didn't miss anything.
No,
Because it was, this is several,
Things
half a year ago notes.
Yeah, I
And
think we
everything
noted that
going
it
through
was
it.
being,
And it's about to be submitted. In fact, some of the fellows that are working for Circa were working on that and they mentioned it when they came in.
Yeah.
And said, oh, good, we didn't miss anything.
Yeah.
Thank you.
In fact, the feedback we got, and this one is unique, right? They're doing a joint hazard mitigation and sort of climate action plan rolled into one. I reached out to David Murphy because he gave me the draft list of action. I actually requested more time because we had to have a couple internal discussions, and he was delighted that anyone was, getting ready to give him feedback. So, yeah.
good.
Thank you.
Other. Next meeting is, okay, any other business? Old business, new business? Next regular meeting is March 9th. And any other issues that, or meetings or updates anybody has?
Well, sir,
Okay. Well,
to adjourn.
a second,
Second.
all in favor?
All right,
Okay, all right, good,
thank you very much.
okay.
Very good. I'm gonna end it. Thanks so much, Sydney.
Sydney, are you still there?
Yes, thank you guys.
Sydney?
You see how it goes.